Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today we have our special guests, the creators who are responsible for the amazing MGM Plus show, Godfather of Harlem.
They said lion doesn't know that he's caged until he's let out. I got a taste of freedom. Now I just can't go back into the cage. That heroin was the one chance I had to control these blocks. Now I'm crawling back to the Italians with my checkbook.
You're just not equipped to carry that kind of debt.
I need some time.
Money's due to Joe Colombo.
Bumpy Johnson.
You can make up your debt to the families by working with me.
And if I say no?
Why would you do that?
You're either gonna work with the Italians or you're gonna fight them.
One will kill to protect what he has.
Your statements help throw the 5 families into disarray.
The other to demand what he hasn't.
If we're gonna win our fight for freedom, I need alliances with the African leaders.
I'll help you. I'll do whatever it takes.
I was in charge. I'm done shaking hands with the Italians. They want to keep me in shackles. I call the shots. Me, and me alone.
Money, hustle, repeat.
We're on the edge of war.
Money.
How much manpower we got?
We wouldn't have a chance against all 5 families.
You're a traitor.
We're losing our grip on Central Harlem.
You and I believe we can solve all our problems by ourselves. We can't.
You need an alliance.
Set a meet with Jose Battle. He can help us change the balance of power.
I'll deal with Bumpy Johnson.
We need to get as far away as possible.
This is our last shot. You're either with me or you're dead.
Warning of a powder keg situation.
This is a suicide mission.
Hate will someday get me killed.
There's one thing you guys never seem to remember.
Why?
Harlem, it's mine.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for having us.
So, congratulations. It's a 3rd season. In a nutshell, where are we going to find these characters? It's been a minute since we've seen them. So tell me a bit about when the show opens, or tell our audience a bit about when the show opens, where will these characters be?
We left last season, the 2nd season, with Bumpy having obtained control of the French Connection and thus putting him in an advantageous position. The only thing he wasn't counting on is that the Harlem riots were going to destroy the entire shipment. And so we pick up season 3 just 3 or 4 days after the Harlem riots have ended. And there's a specific reason we did that, which I'll explain. The 3rd season, though, forces Bumpy to not only repay the huge debt he has to the Italians, but also to seek alliances within the community. And so if last year was the French connection, this year is the Cuban connection, because Bumpy Johnson realizes he needs an alliance with Jose Battle, who is the reigning gangster of Spanish Harlem. So what we're going to watch in season 3 is a black-brown alliance, which mirrored what was going on in the civil rights movement at the time. We're going to watch it not only occur in the civil rights side of our show, but also in the gangster side of our show, with lots of attendant drama.
Now, the world's changed a little since you guys were on set. With COVID and presidencies, unpopular presidencies, and social upheaval. How did that inform the things you brought into your creative toolkit for this season?
Well, I'm always saying, we've been waiting for the world to catch up to us, in a way, and I think as we continued to make this show, we felt freer and freer to really dig into some of these issues and use the jump of time, a period, to really act as a metaphor, a mirror, and hopefully inform people that what we're dealing with now isn't new. We're just in a forever cycle. And what was going on and what these people were dealing with at this time as African Americans, as Latino Americans, as just people who are fighting oppression, was it's not the same thing. Certainly there's been advancements, but to know that where we are now comes from a place has been really, really important. And the consciousness that's happened in America and in this world, I think has made our show something that you want to tune into even more. Yeah. And, as I'm always saying, the biggest joy I have is particularly when youth watch our show and they go, oh, wow, it's just like it was. And they'll go and they'll look up who Adam Clayton Powell is, or they'll really read who Malcolm X and where he comes from. And they'll understand that they're part of a much longer journey. And that's important and can uplift us all.
Now, the Malcolm X character has been recast this season. What can you tell us about this? There's a lot of curiosity around this new actor.
We had between seasons 2 and 3, there were business things that pushed our production later than we expected. And so Nigel Thatch, the actor who so brilliantly captured Malcolm in the first 2 seasons, had scheduling conflicts that didn't allow him to join us for season 3. So we recast with Jason Allen Carvel. And we have found, we believe, someone who is as brilliant as Nigel was at filling the shoes of a very difficult character to play, Malcolm X. What Jason brings to the role is a kind of gravitas and also a warmth that we think the viewers will really sink in with. And Swizz is watching the cuts we give him to create music, so I'm actually interested in his opinion more than my own.
Well, I think when I first heard about the news, I was like, okay, that's not just any Malcolm you're going to replace. Like, he was like Malcolm. And I just remember saying to myself, how would this work? And when I seen the new fella, I was like, okay, we have something here. And he's done marvelous to jump right into action, and this is what you call a skill in acting, when people can jump in and fill in where they didn't start. He's coming in 3rd season, and so this is a big jump for him, and kudos to him, and I'm excited for people to see what's getting ready to happen.
Let's talk about some of the challenges of telling a story that is largely about real people. And but I mean, the series doesn't pretend to be a documentary. So how do you strike that balance of telling their story, being true to their story, but also weaving in elements that keep an audience, from switching the channel?
That's a great question. First of all, a lot of the issues that the contemporary issues that the show is able to tackle, we're able to tackle because we're viewing it through the prism of the past. Imagine if we were doing a show about what's going on in this country right now. We wouldn't even be able to put it on the air. The setting it in 64, 65 gives us this safe remove of the past, and yet at the same time, the show is about today. What has changed, because some things have, and what hasn't, because a lot hasn't, and none of us are happy about that. And so the show becomes a platform for us to explore that. We weren't present for conversations between Bumpy and Malcolm, though surely they existed because these guys played chess on Sundays, met for breakfast at 22 West. So what we're forced to do is to take what we know about Malcolm, and there's quite a bit because he wrote a lengthy autobiography, and what we know about Bumpy, which is much less because so much less is recorded. And what we try to do is we try to be honest to the spirit of the times and to the spirit of those men and the women and other men who are part of our show, and try to capture an accuracy of spirit as opposed to, direct documentary reality. And again, it's all in the service of us presenting the audience with not only an entertaining gangster show, but a show that makes interesting points about the way we're living today.
And I think to add to that, I get phone calls from Chris telling me, listen, we got this scene, and it's raw. And I need the music to be uncut like what I'm about to show you. And some people might have a problem with it, but we have to tell this part of the story. And that's what I love and respect of the whole process. I don't feel like anything was being left out to play around. Like I felt that, you know, these guys kept it to the core, and it also helps with the music component as well, because you get something like, man, that's not the Bumpy we want to see. You know, we want the real experience as the culture, as the people, and to see those scripts and then to see them come out on the screen uncut and almost like too raw sometimes. You know, like this is a breath of fresh air, because you know so much information that's held back can help people. You know, whether we like it or not, it's all educational based, and to have the real grassroots of what happened as much as possible is very important, and you guys have been unbelievable with this.
One of the biggest joys I've had on the show is being able to talk to people who knew him, who knew this time. Like, we're of the time now, the generation, we're the last people who were around in really old school Harlem are. And so, you know, being able to talk to some of Bumpy's comrades, we're very close with his daughter or his granddaughter, who passed before the show started. And we've just been able to talk to a lot of people who really, really give us a sense of history. And that has always made me go, look, our job isn't to do a documentary. We're not here just about the facts. We're here, our intention is to get at the essence of the truth and express how the truth of that time can resonate to now, right? And we're lucky to be able to do that and have some amazing people along with us, like Whoopi behind you over there.
What Swizz was referring to was there was a scene we did that was an ugly scene of a Ku Klux Klan cross burning, and I remember the studio saying to me, "We're not so sure we should shoot this," and and I said, "No, I want Swizz to put music on it," and they said, "Well, we're not sure it's," and I called him and I said, "Look, man, I'm going to send you some footage that's ugly, and you're going and do you want to take on this task?" And he said, "This is exactly why I want to be on this show."
Yeah.
And the song he gave us for that was called "Goddamn," and it's to me there's so many resonant songs that he's created as he gets inside Bumpy's head and creates music that essentially is a reflection of Bumpy's character. But what's also captured in his music is just the raw anger that is beneath the surface of all of what we're doing. Bumpy is a man who could explode at any moment given the injustices that he so clearly sees around him, and yet he can't. He has a family, he has a business, he has colleagues, and so we feel that seething anger and resentment about the injustices that we depict on the show is always present, and it creates a tension for the audience that watches it too. And so Swizz's music, we think, captures not only the beauty of Bumpy's life, but also that resentment and anger that has to be a part of the African American experience in this country.
Swizz music is very much another character in this series. Talk about your process, because it's essential in driving along the narratives.
Yeah, the process is very interesting. It started off, I would always say, as a party. Because you want to feel the energies. You want to feel the energies of everybody that has something to do with the show. And I did a writing camp for a couple of weeks, and these guys hit me with the task of 20 records. And I was like, okay, cool, we can do that. And he's like, no, it's 20 records. I'm like, okay, cool, we can do it. And every night,
I said nobody can make 20 good records in 2 weeks. There's no chance.
Yeah, and so I had a different artist come every night. We had visuals up so they can see the color of the film. They can see the feeling of how it's being shot, which is important. That's one thing I love is the color of what's being shot, because it brings you into the real film side of it. Sometimes people are shooting too polished, and then it brings you your imagination. I don't know, it's too pretty. I don't know. But so it started like that, and that was season 1. And then season 2, I realized that if I scored and made the music as I was the voice in Bumpy's head, it would make the character stronger, right? And so when you listen to the beginning of season 2, I done been to hell. That's Bumpy thinking in his mind while he's going through that mission in that car chase. And then once, I added that component of saying, oh, I'm the voice in Bumpy's head, and the music is going to be the voice, it kind of what he's thinking. Once I came up with that concept, it actually became more fun. So now that's how I think. I'm like, okay, what would, when Bumpy walks in this room, what is going through his mind? And that's the music that we're putting there. And then, when it's not Bumpy scenes, we go another place. But the music is a character itself, so that's how I'm treating it. I'm treating it like it's a character as well.
And what a wealthy character when you consider the music of that time period, from obviously Motown and Philly and Stax, and it just goes on and on and on. Have you visited those libraries in, helping you do what you're doing so well?
Yes, thank you. What I did was I listened to Pusha Man, I listened to Shaft, I listened to a lot of the soundtracks that was behind the heroes or / villains, because they all had a theme song, and so that's when you hear, Bumpy's theme song, open up my window again, I can hear death calling my name, right? Just in case, right? So it's like, how can we give Bumpy that same energy? How can we give Bumpy that same respect? And then how can we give this whole movie the best composition as possible? That these are big shoes to fill. The story itself is iconic. The people that's working on the show is iconic. It's hard not to miss, but a lot of people miss, because I feel like they miscalculate sometimes. They feel that they need a song that's current today, that's out to bring the youth in. They need, different things that, if not done right, they'll feel forced, right? So if you listen to the music in the show, you can't tell whether those songs were yesterday or today. I try to make them time period free, so where they can adapt to any time period and feeling. You're not even thinking damn, shouldn't Marvin Gaye be singing this? Shouldn't this person be singing it? It's a new person singing it, or a person that's not even famous singing it, but it works. And that's the freedom that I was allowed to have, and I think that's why it plays so well together.
Where do you want to see? Of course, as the creators, you have the privilege to really take the story any place you want to take it to. But where do we want to see? And we know how Bumpy's story ends, but I'm curious about what type of liberties you might take in as his story progresses beyond this season. Have you guys given any thought to the Bumpy's endgame, and if there ever will be one, or how you're gonna?
I think there's a couple important things to say. The first is this: we generally, the first season was Bumpy returning from prison and trying to reclaim Harlem from the Italians. The second was the French connection. The third year is the Cuban connection. The fourth year, my guess might be the Westies or the Irish mob. In other words, we can choose a criminal group who Bumpy's going to face off against. But that's fun, and that's the backdrop. What's most important to this group sitting up here is that this show is the education of Bumpy Johnson. We understand that what we create can glamorize gangsterism, it can glamorize gunplay, and it can glamorize narcotics selling. And at the same time, it is our responsibility as creatives to make sure, in our opinion, that the show is Bumpy's slow but sure move to a consciousness and a conscience about what he's doing in order to make his money and what it does to the community and to the people who surround him. Mm-hmm. We take an attitude on this show that crime, we can just look at it from afar and go, a criminal is a person who's chosen to be a bad person. No, every single group in this country that's been considered second-class citizens, be they German immigrants, Italian, Jewish, and black, with one major difference, uses crime at first because they do not have legitimate means of opportunity. And so crime is uniquely tied to civil rights. As a particular culture gains economically, they gain socially and culturally and politically, to the point where we had a black president in the 2000s. So the point is this, things do change for these groups. The significant difference, of course, with the African American population is their immigration was forced. It was not by choice. But still, similarities exist with how crime ties with civil rights, and that's what our show is about. But for us, we don't want people to watch the arc of this show over hopefully 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons and walk away going, gosh, I just want to be a drug-dealing gangster. Yeah. No. What we want to make sure is we're understanding it from all different angles. You're going to see in this season, more so than any other, that Bumpy's conscience, his soul, gets touched by what it is he's actively doing in his community, which is selling narcotics, in addition to putting people in school, to sending. Paul's grandmother was sent to secretarial school by Bumpy Johnson. That's how me and Paul and I 40 years ago started to discuss this man, because this man had a measurable effect in his family's life. And Paul was like, why isn't this man represented in our film and television? Why do I see a Michael Corleone or a Tony Montana? Why do I not see this guy? And frankly, his dedication to getting that story told, and our friendship and partnership over the years yielded the movie Hoodlum in the 90s, and then cut to 20 years later, Forrest Whitaker and some producers approached us about doing Bumpy in the 60s. Hoodlum was set in Bumpy's early days in the 30s, played by Lawrence Fishburne. And so Paul and I at first were like, well, is there anything to tell about Bumpy in the 60s? And then as we reflected on Bumpy's relationship with Malcolm X, we saw the key. It's the collision of organized crime and civil rights. And those two things are connected in ways that none of us have ever really contemplated before. And that's what this show seeks to contemplate.
Glad you said that. It was great to understand that the character is going to arrive at a level of consciousness that will enable the audience to understand the why of his existence, you know. What do you hope are season 3 takeaways?
Well, I mean, season 3. Look, season 3 in some ways is a culmination of where we started. Mm-hmm. You know, it ends, no spoiler here, it ends with Malcolm X's assassination. And so following that journey, and that journey of consciousness with as we talked about with Bumpy, but also for Malcolm, of going from the Nation of Islam and that philosophy to his own, and eventually facing up to what he had to face up to. So for me, season 3 is really, really vitally important on that level of speaking to the politics of what was happening, what was exploding in the black consciousness of everybody's minds, the beginnings of the Black Power movement, understanding that Malcolm's journey wasn't just in America, but that it was international, and really that has been washed away by a lot of storytellers, and not understanding his significance in the world at the time. So that for season 3, I think, you know, it's a story of alliances. It's really about the alliances that Bumpy has, but it's also about the alliances that Malcolm tries to form, and how Harlem in and of itself becomes sort of a megaphone, an igniter for what happens in the rest of the world. Not just with the civil rights movement, but with, as I say, the consciousness of Black Power. So when you talk about where we're going, you know, my grandmother would always say that Harlem became a ghetto when Bumpy died, right? And that it was at that moment when the consciousness of the gangsters started being more about themselves and more about money and their own power, as opposed to understanding that you're looking out for a community, that you're actually a real godfather. And so, you know, I think that the ideas that Bumpy's got to grapple with over the next couple of seasons in terms of civil rights movement, Black Power movement, do you align with not just the Latinos, but the Jews? Do you align with the anti-war movement. How are we going to all fit together to really, really create change through this gangster's eye is going to be really fascinating, and you've never seen that.
Well, and what Malcolm said, true fact, is when the black gangster, with his intellect, with his ability to skirt obstacles, with his ability to make money and make a living for himself and his family, when that man gains a political consciousness, white America will tremble. And I hope our show opens. I'll never forget being in Swizz's writers camp. It's one of the greatest experiences of my life. We handed over 10 cut episodes, and he's got artists coming in from all over the place, and we wondered, are the younger people, even the artists who are coming in to perform, they're going to be interested in the bumpy side, that's gangster vibe. Are they going to be interested in this Malcolm side, this political, the Nation of Islam? And I'll never forget walking past one of Swizz's recording studios at Jungle City. I'm looking through the mirrored glass, and I think it was Buddy. There was a young rapper, like 20 years old or something, 21 years old, and I see him and his eyes are staring upward. They're glued to something. And I lean down to the glass and I look up, and he's watching a cut of the show that's up on one of the TVs, and it's a Malcolm scene. It's like a deep political Malcolm scene, and he's fascinated. And I thought to myself, oh man,
we got something. Yeah.
We got something. You know, the kids are just as interested in that as the other. And that's when I knew that our conception for the show, the collision of crime and civil rights, was maybe a good mix.
And understanding how that relates to what he does, right? Understanding that the politics of the 60s came out in entertainment, came out in the music, right? And that at its core, hip hop is political, right? And that's where that's one of the things, and also one of the things that Forrest was always telling us from day one, was no, the music is an expression of where we are today. It's not just...
Well, and what Forrest Whitaker was the driving force behind saying, let's create music for the show, original music. Let's not license hip-hop that's already out there and just glom it onto the show. Let's find the right artists, and Forrest, myself, and Paul interviewed multiple artists, and Swizz was the one who, quite honestly, was the man for the job. And I remember Forrest calling Swizz and saying, hey, this show's really important to me, and if it's going to be as important to you, then let's do this. And Swizz says it is, and here we are.
Yeah. Blessed.
So, and we're certainly blessed to be able to witness, this work. Thank you guys. I mean, really, it's a wonderful series, and we're looking forward to watching this season and next.
Really appreciate your support.
Thanks, Gil.
Thank you so much, Gil.
Thank you so much.